welcome to the Media Leader Podcast. I'm Omar Oakes and I'm back from a week's holiday. So I'm feeling super energetic to talk about what's going on in media. Later on in this episode, you'll hear me chat to Les Binet, the advertising effectiveness guru from Cannes Lions. But first, joining me in today's episode where we discuss the big media and advertising stories of the week, we have Maria Yu, Deputy Editor at the Media Leader. If you're tuning in for Jack and Ella, sorry, Jack is on holiday and Ella's covering an industry event this morning at Digital Cinema Media. So hello to you, Maria. Hi. You hosted one of our biggest talks last week at the Media Leader Summit in London. You jointly interviewed some of the UK industry's biggest names who won big prizes at the Media Leader Awards. Tell me, how was that?
It was a really great event, and it was really reassuring to hear that talent remains a big issue for everyone. So I hosted a panel with Paddy Affleck, Thomas Bremont, Rob Edwards, and our Grand Prix winner, Dom Williams. And yes, every one of them is saying, talent has to remain a big priority this year. And it's all about how them as leaders can nurture and support them. And also as leaders, how they need to be honest and admit to mistakes.
Honest and admit to mistakes. Well, I never did any of them. So I have to explain to our audience. So this event that we do, the Media Leader Summit in London, the awards are a part of it, but it's definitely an event where it's invite only. We invite some of the biggest and most influential names in the UK media and advertising industry. And this event, importantly, is Chatham House. So I guess we can't say too much about who said what. But I have to ask you, did anyone admit to making mistakes?
Oh, I'm pretty sure some of them admitted plenty of mistakes. So really, it's about learning from those mistakes moving forward as a leader.
I wouldn't know. I never make mistakes. No comment. So very interesting. Lots of reporting on that. And let's get into some of the big stories of the week. Because we can't ignore it. UK general election time. We're recording this on Wednesday. By the time listeners hear this, it's probably going to be Thursday morning, where you might have even voted already. Don't want to sway anything. But obviously, unless there is a massive shock, Keir Starmer and the Labour Party are going to be in power on Friday in the UK. Now, I think it's fair to say, Maria, culture, media and sport brief generally isn't high on the agenda for any government, Labour or Conservative, in this country. There are some important issues, however, that Starmer and whoever the culture secretary is will need to sort out. There's still this issue of advertising regulation, HFSS, regulating big tech, social media, and of course the issue that will never go away, the future of the BBC. I want to ask you about Raymond Snoddy's column, which came out this morning on the Media Leader. He accused Labour of making vague promises about widening access. What more does he think Labour should do, assuming they'll be running the country on Friday?
Actually, he's just very specific about the fact that there's a lack of very specific, concrete things that Labour has said so far, especially in the manifesto. So you actually have to sort of dig a bit deeper and look at past speeches, etc., to actually really get a sense of what Labour wants to do. So he's arguing that actually enough talk, we need some actual concrete measures. Labour, what are you going to do to support this industry, which is actually really important and contributes a lot to the UK economy.
And internationally, I mean, I think sometimes people in the wider world forget just how important the creative sector is as an export as well. It's not for nothing that there's this huge delegation promoting Great Britain that goes out to Cannes Lions and Advertising Week New York, to other big events where the UK contributes a huge amount, whether it's media, planning and buying services, advertising, creative talent. You only have to look at your Netflix to see all the British actors having a wonderful time putting on American accents. We contribute a lot. I think it's a difficult one because I think Labour, like so many things, is trying not to say too much. This is very much an election where the Conservatives are losing it, maybe much more than Labour gaining it. So they just don't want to screw it up. And as I said before, culture, media, sport, it's never been the most high profile brief when you're dealing with the future of the health service, education, immigration, the economy, etc. But I think generally what we need to get back to, this what we had under Boris Johnson and a bit under Sunak is essentially using media to start culture wars. And we need to get away from that. We need to stop with this, the game of privatization, Channel 4. Was that ever did they ever really want that to happen? Or was it just trolling, constant attacks on the BBC? More generally, I think government just needs to get out of the way, unless it's going to work with business, unless it's going to work with the third sector to address the talent issue, which, as you brought together in the Media Leaders Summit talk, talent is still really important. And as we talked about a lot in the Media Leader, maybe media and advertising isn't as sexy a career as it used to go into. People demand higher salaries to come into this profession. So what are we going to do collectively with government, with higher education, to make this a more appealing sector? Because it is really important, as you say.
And to go back to what Raymond was saying, so one thing that he thinks high on the agenda, as you've previously already mentioned, is the BBC, particularly how it's going to be funded. Labour presumably would take a slightly different approach to the Conservatives, so we'll have to see what they're going to do in this next 5 years, presumably. Yeah,
well, they certainly, won't use it to launch culture wars, I should think. One of the interesting interviews from the summit last week was Nigel Sharrock's, who's the former Dentsu Aegis exec. He's now chair of Barb in digital cinema media. He spoke about how the big streaming platforms are hiving off all of the best talent. Maria, do you think Labour has more to do with fixing the talent gap?
So that is something that is in the Labour manifesto. It talks vaguely about widening access. Now, what that actually means realistically and practically, no one knows at this point. But it is going to be a recurring issue. We need to think about how we get diverse people into an industry that is really still, in many parts, white and middle class.
We also heard from media analysts Ian Whittaker and Matthew Bloxham. Interviews went up this week on themedialeader.co.uk. They talked about what to expect with the economy if Labour takes power. Maria, what do you think were the key takeaways from what these analysts said?
So for anyone who was expecting a Labour government and for some miraculous magic wand to make everything suddenly amazing, you'll be disappointed to hear.
Oh.
Both Ian and Matthew talk about the fact that there's probably going to be, at least in the sort of immediate term, a kind of benign effect. Ian focuses on the fact that, businesses like certainty. So there should be some positivity in that sense with an expectation of a Labour government and then for the Labour government to actually come into power. And he also talks about this protection of the existing ecosystem. So Labour would be focusing on that to not, rock any boats. Matthew, on the other hand, then talks about how, it's not going to significantly change the economic outlook for now. At the moment, the midterm is still looking a bit muted. We have, for example, really high debt. So in the immediate term, Labour is unlikely to be able to change very much.
Yeah, and I think in the life cycle of any government, particularly a centre-left government which comes into power with a mandate to change things, you're going to expect taxes to go up in the first year of the Labour government, probably the first 6 months. So that's something obviously that businesses generally don't like because consumers generally have less purchasing power, less money to spend on streaming services. So there's likely to be some sort of short-term dampening. But I think, as Matthew said further down the line, if interest rates go down, if inflation is under control, that should create that benign environment, as you put it. I think in the midterm, Ian Whittaker said that we can expect probably higher growth than we had in previous years. Let's remember that ever since 2010 and austerity, this country has been on zero growth for a long time, and economic historians will find this fascinating in future years to come, because what do you do when you've had zero growth in an advanced economy for a long time? There's still a lot of spending, still a lot of investment, and a lot of that was to do with interest rates being historically low. But I think it goes to show that after some point, money just has to move somewhere. So even if we have zero growth under Labour for the next couple of years, touch wood, no economic shocks, no war, no further wars, etc., then the money's got to move somewhere. So I think everyone's kind of cautiously optimistic. Now, Other stories that mattered this week. Netflix commissioned its highest number of new titles since the third quarter of 2021, and Amazon set a new record for its quarterly commissions, according to an Ampere analysis report for the first quarter of this year. Now, Maria, does this mean, as the New York Times reported, there are, quote, signs of life in the TV market after a major slowdown?
Absolutely. I think, we talk a lot about linear on the decline, but of course, TV is more than linear. It's lots of other ways of consuming content, and clearly Netflix and Amazon thinks there's growth in it for them. Otherwise, they wouldn't make all this investment.
Yeah, I have to slight caution. I mean, if you look at these figures, these numbers are comparing it to the strike times of 2022 when commissions flatlined for obvious reasons because of the US writers' strike. A lot of these orders are international productions as opposed to being US based. So the industry volume compared to previous times is still quite a lot lower. So you have to think that we're still in this new normal phase of commissioning being down compared to the streaming wars that we had. You have to really wonder whether the streaming wars are ever going to come back. Use this as an opportunity to plug my column this week, in which I'm starting to openly I want this conversation with the industry about how, as the way I see it now, marketing and advertising has never been bigger. It's never been bigger, but it's just that as we call it, the long tail is now just getting so long that we almost just can't see it. So for us as journalists, we're kind of trained to talk to big names and talk to big companies, etc. But as a proportion of the whole industry, these big names and companies are getting smaller. So that creates an issue for us, right? Because we're not talking, we can talk about Netflix and Amazon commissioning a big procedural series or movies or whatever. But what about all these YouTubers who maybe are not on anyone's radar because they're getting 1,500 subscribers, but times that by X thousand, suddenly it's huge. It's huge. Just the fragmentation that's happening in content and media is just huge. Having said that, that brings us on to Tubi. Fox's ad-supported streaming platform is to enter the UK market, we reported this week. It's going to launch with more than 20,000 films and TV episodes on demand, with content from companies including Disney, Lionsgate, NBCU and Sony Pictures Entertainment on there, as well as its own original Fox programming. So, Maria, given what I just said, I'm really confused. Are there too many streaming services in this market? How is there room for Fox? What's going to be different?
I do feel like generally everyone can agree that there are too many of these platforms around. So this is Fox's play now, and you could argue maybe it's a bit late considering all the others are pretty established. However, let's remember that actually for Amazon and Disney in particular, the ad tier has only come in relatively recently. So this, so you could argue that Tubi isn't too late to the market at all in terms of competing in the AVOD space. And let's also remember that in June, Barb's study found that there is a sort of plateau in SVOD in the UK, certainly. I guess the argument goes that if people are getting a bit sick of paying for multiple services, then, anyone that can offer a good ad offering that requires no money each month, then they could potentially do well.
Yeah. I'm in two minds about this because I think if you remember back to Connected TV World Summit, our huge global event in March, a lot of the chat from that was really interesting conversations about how we're really seeing the re-emergence of the bundle, pay TV operators who are bundling together all these different streaming services, lots of different deals in different markets on whether it's ad-free, adding to subscription packages, somewhere in between, whether in the future a Spotify becomes part of that as well, not just TV streaming, as well as ongoing attempts to bring fast TV into the European market. We'll see about that. So on the one hand, you could look at it and think, actually, the conditions are set fair for a Tubi to come into the market and be part of this bundle. On the other hand, I kind of tend to agree with a report on the BBC about this. They quoted Abby Watson, who's a senior analyst at Enders. She said that whilst Tubi has been very successful in the US, the UK is a very different environment. So getting around it, a lot of people consume the BBC. It does feel like, last roll of the dice for Fox and TV outside of the US. But we'll see. Now, an out-of-home revelation this week. London's most attention-grabbing bus shelters. That's right. JCDecaux has found out that London bus shelter screens garner an average of 4.4 seconds of attention, which might not seem like much to you and me, but that's way ahead of other digital channels, including social media. That's according to some research they've done with Lumen Research and Transport for London. Shout out to Mike Follett and Sadiq Khan, I guess. But more importantly, Maria, which bus shelters are best at grabbing attention in London and why?
You're not going to believe this. These are not shelters that you would expect to really see in an article like this. So I will tell you, the most attention-grabbing bus shelters are Barking Station, Seven Sisters Station, Wood Green, Ealing Town Hall, and Bexley Heath Marketplace.
Well, apart from Ealing, I'm detecting some East London vibes. I mean, you're an East London person. What's going on? Do people just like hanging out of bus shelters and they're just more attentive? What's going on?
I can only assume that these are all very, very much central kind of transport hubs. So there's, in East London, there's a lot of buses, lots of buses. So I'm guessing part of that reason is so that, people are there and they spend their time looking at all the great ads that are running on these digital screens at bus shelters.
Probably not plugged in there with their AirPods listening to podcasts like this. I suspect that might have something to do with it. Very interesting. Check that story out on themedialeader.co.uk. And in publishing, we start with the election, so let's finish with the election. In publishing, the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats have continued to distribute fake local newspapers which promote their candidates in the 2024 election, despite ongoing, forever criticism of the practice from people like us, media groups. This was in a report this week by Press Gazette. The title said it had been sent or had found on social media 14 examples of fake newspapers sent during the election campaign, 9 by the Lib Dems, 4 by the Tories, 1 by Greens. Maria, why is this so popular? I get these through my door and I just bin them because I know what they are straight away. I mean, why is it so popular and why does nothing ever get done about it?
I think let's start with the positive. I think it shows that trusted journalism still very much has a place in our society, and that's why they have done it.
So good they had to fake it.
Indeed. But of course, the issue for me, the debate is definitely about this. On the one hand, the argument of free speech, they should be allowed to do what they want, versus what any real person, I think, in my opinion, would see this as a kind of slightly disingenuous approach to promoting your political party. And I think the main issue is the fact that currently political advertising in this sense does not fall under the ASA remit. So that means basically it's a free-for-all.
Yeah, I kind of, I always will tend towards being free speech and, political parties should be able to say whatever they want as long as they're not lying. It's funny that apart from political advertising, you're not allowed to lie. Unilever can't lie in their advertising, but a political party can. But on the other hand, it does feel like there is a deception happening. It does feel like there should be some sort of special rule in place that even though if you get these through your door, there's always somewhere where it says in small print, this was delivered on behalf of the Liberal Democrats, on behalf of whatever.
Very
this
small
address.
print.
So it is there, but there should be some rule where they have to make that. In the same way that social media influencers or anyone that's promoting an ad on social media has to have #ad under ASA guidelines, CAP code guidelines. I don't understand why it's too much of a stretch just to say you just need a #ad on the corner of in big red letters on the corner of your fake local newspaper. I don't see why that's so difficult.
So this is what something that Reform Political Advertising has been pushing for. So they're a lobby group who has been around for a while, and they are asking for better, more proper regulation on political ads. So they are all over this.
They're all over it, so everything's going to be okay. Okay, that's all the time that we have for the big stories of the week. Let us know what we didn't cover, what we should talk more about. Email me directly, omar.oakes@uk.adwanted.com. Thank you very much, Maria. Now to our interview with Les Binet from Cannes Lions.
Les Binet, Group Head of Effectiveness, Adam and Eve, DDB, is that your job title?
It is indeed.
Oh, good, I remembered that. So good to see you at Cannes Lions on the opening Monday morning. You're just about to do a panel with Karen Nelson-Fields. What are you going to talk about?
Well, we're being interviewed by Justin Le Bon, and we're going to be talking about advertising effectiveness, measurement, that kind of thing.
And generally, I mean, how many times have you been to Cannes, and what would be your top advice for anyone who hasn't been the first time going?
I think this is probably number 4 or 5. I haven't been that often. Don't drink too much.
Yeah, because I imagine you don't want to wake up with a hangover and go to a load of meetings. I mean, everyone must want to talk to you. I mean, your diary must be stacked. How do you manage it?
Well, possibly you're exaggerating, but yeah, there are a few people who want to talk to me, but yeah, you manage.
Because people want to know what you think about effectiveness and where things are heading. Measurement is always a massive topic, particularly as more and more advertising, more of the industry goes digital. I mean, how does that split between the kind of more general things that you talk about versus the stuff that you do for Adam and Eve DDB? How does it work?
Well, my role at Adam and Eve DDB as head of effectiveness is really 3 things. Measuring the effectiveness, or helping our clients to measure the effectiveness of their marketing and advertising in hard business terms, working out what the payback is. So that's the first job. Then understanding what the ingredients of effectiveness are. So, like, how does it work? What is it what are the magic ingredients that create profit? And then finally, optimizing and improving effectiveness, making sure that it keeps working and it works better and better over time. So those are the 3 things that I think about all the time, really, in my job. And I do that for Adam and Eve part of the week, and I do a certain amount of private work as well. And in the private part is when I tend to do my public speaking, lecturing, training, that kind of thing.
And what's the hot topic? What do people want to know? What have you found people want to know? What's the question you keep getting this year compared to previous years?
To be honest, I don't tend to pay very much attention to the hot topics. I think if there's there are many flaws in the advertising industry, and one of them is that we're just obsessed with fashion and the latest thing. Marketing journalists, particularly.
Don't say that.
Yeah, you all want to know what the hot topic is. And that's a huge distraction, usually, because I focus on the eternal verities, if you like. I want to know what's not changing, what's fundamental, what are the unchanging principles of marketing effect.
So what are people, ask a different way, what are people being distracted by that maybe they shouldn't be?
Well, AI is a big one. Although, actually, having said that, I'm actually quite a big fan of AI. I don't know if you know this, but I did my postgraduate study in AI back in 1982 to 1984.
Oh, really? I thought AI was just invented with ChatGPT.
No, you know that's not true. AI was a big thing in the 1960s, of course. Anyone who's seen 2001: A Space Odyssey could probably guess that. So I was part of the second big wave of AI in the early 80s. So I'm a big fan of AI, which is why on Friday I'm going to be introducing Les GPT, the AI version of myself.
Oh, really? And is that open source? Can anybody use that? And why would they use that?
It's only open to DDB clients, I'm afraid. They get privileged access, but it's an AI trained on my writings, my books, my articles, my social feed, and so forth. And it enables me to scale, if you like. I'm quite small, you see.
Obviously I'd have to try it to see it, but that does sound like a gimmick, just hearing that for the first time. Is it a gimmick?
Of course it is. No, well, it is kind of. No, actually, I think it potentially has uses. I mean, I have used it myself. I had to write something under pressure, and so I was able to get my avatar to write it for me. So it's not bad. But
that must be writing something short. It can't be a whole.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a 1 minute segment. But it's not going to replace me, I hope. But given that there's only one of me and I only work part-time, it means that all of our many offices around the world have access to some of my thinking at the touch of a button, sort of thing. So it's an interesting idea. I think as interesting as that is seeing its limitations as well. One of the things it's kind of teaching me is actually there are one or two things which I haven't made fully clear in my writing, because if Les GPT doesn't quite understand some of the concepts, then I presumably haven't made them clear.
Which is fascinating. I can't wait to see it in action.
So on Friday I'll be on at the Palais, and it'll be me and my avatar going head to head on stage.
Amazing. Can't wait for that. And finally, I mean, what's the most fun experience you've had at Cannes, or what's something that you really look forward to? Who's got like the best parties, or what's fun here?
Winning awards, winning a Grand Prix, that was the most fun.
Yeah, well, because you have won the Grand Prix before, and
yeah.
What did you do to celebrate?
I've got a lovely memory of being taken out into the harbour on a rib to the yacht, holding the lion in my hands. So that being getting on board the yacht with a lion.
Is that all-time career high?
Oh no.
What would that be?
That would have been the secretarial away day in 1993.
All right. Tune in next time to find out more about that. But until now, Les Binet, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks again for listening to the Media Leader podcast. If you like what you hear, guess what? You can read our stuff at our website, themedialeader.co.uk, where you can sign up to our daily newsletter in the UK of analysis, opinion and commentary about what's going on in media and advertising. You can also find us on YouTube. We are posting video interviews and clips from our live events. And don't forget to check out our LinkedIn page, which is often a very interesting way to see what people in the industry are saying about our articles and the issues we write about. Anyway, back to work. Catch you next time. Bye bye.